Monday, 6 in the morning. The alarm clock pierces the silence of a small house on West 57th Street in the Gage Park neighborhood. Michael Green automatically reaches out to turn off the sound, trying not to wake Sarah. At 38, he has been working as a driver for FedEx for 12 years, and his morning routine is honed to perfection. Unshaven, wearing an old t-shirt and jeans, Michael goes down to the kitchen and turns on the coffee maker. The house that he and Sarah bought 8 years ago, when prices were still reasonable, now requires constant repairs. Peeling paint on the walls, a creaky floor in the hallway, a leaky faucet in the bathroom. All of these things are waiting for their turn, but the money goes to more urgent needs. Sarah appears in the kitchen at 7 in the morning, already dressed in her dental clinic uniform. At 35, she is still attractive, although the fatigue of recent years has left its mark on the corners of her eyes. They exchange the usual phrases about their plans for the day, avoiding each other's gaze. "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning," Sarah reminds him as she pours coffee into a travel mug. "Uh-huh," Michael nods, looking through the bills that have piled up on the kitchen table. Their conversations have become increasingly practical in recent years. Mortgage, utility bills, the need to replace the washing machine. That's what they talk about at breakfast. The romance of 15 years of marriage has dissolved into everyday concerns. Michael leaves for work at 7:30. His route takes him across the city, from their home in Gage Park to the FedEx distribution center on the south side. The white van with purple stripes has become his second home. He feels more confident behind the wheel than he does at home. Here, he has clear tasks, a straightforward schedule, and concrete results. The distribution center is bustling with the usual hustle and bustle. Hundreds of packages are sorted, loaded into vehicles, and sent to their destinations. Michael knows this system like the back of his hand. His colleague, Tom Harris, with whom he has been working the same shift for 7 years, greets him with a joke about his Monday mood. "You look like you've been run over by a truck again," Tom laughs as he helps load the parcels. Tom is one of the few people with whom Michael can truly relax. They often have lunch together, discuss sports news, and sometimes go for a beer after their shift. In the middle of the morning, their work is interrupted by an announcement of a meeting. All the drivers gather in the conference room, where an unfamiliar man in an expensive suit is waiting for them. David Cole introduces himself as the new regional manager, who recently moved to Chicago from the Denver office. Cole looks successful and confident for his 42 years. His speech about increasing efficiency and new service standards sounds professional, but Michael notices how he studies the employees with his eyes, memorizing faces and names. When Cole asks about the driver's marital status, supposedly to understand their work schedules, Michael replies briefly that he is married. After the meeting, Tom grumbles, "Another boss who thinks he knows our job better than we do." Michael nods silently, but something about the new manager's manner of lingering on answers about families strikes him as odd. Meanwhile, Sarah spends the day at Dr. Patel's dental clinic on the northwest side. The job of administrator requires constant communication with patients, record-keeping, and conflict resolution. She is tired of people by the end of the day, but the job provides a steady income and health insurance for her family. During her lunch break, Sarah meets her friend Jessica at a small cafe near the clinic. They discuss the usual topics: Jessica's children, plans for the weekend, a new series on Netflix. Sarah avoids talking about her marriage, responding to questions about Michael with general phrases. In the evening, the couple has dinner in front of the TV and watches the news. Sarah talks about a difficult patient. Michael talks about his new boss. The conversation flows sluggishly, with long pauses. "Maybe we could visit your mom this weekend?" Sarah suggests. "We'll see," Michael replies, without taking his eyes off the screen. After dinner, they go about their business. Sarah scrolls through social media in the bedroom, while Michael watches sports news in the living room. At 10 o'clock, they go to bed, each on their own side of the bed, without touching each other. This is a typical day in the life of the Green family. None of them suspect that their measured life is about to change forever. A week after meeting his new boss, David Cole began holding individual meetings with the drivers. Michael received an invitation to the manager's office during his lunch break. Cole's office was located on the second floor of the distribution center building, with large windows overlooking the loading docks. "Have a seat, Michael." Cole pointed to the chair across from his desk. "I'm studying the personal files of all employees to better understand the team." Cole opened a folder of documents and began asking questions about work experience, plans for the future, and family situation. His interest in his personal life seemed unusual to Michael, but he answered honestly. He told him about Sarah, that they had been married for 15 years, and about the financial difficulties faced by most working-class families. "Does your wife work?" Cole asked, making notes in his notebook. "Yes, she's an administrator at a dental clinic on the northwest side," Michael replied. "That's a great profession. The medical field is always in demand." Cole nodded. "How do you spend your free time?" Michael was a little surprised by the question, but explained that he and Sarah mostly stay at home, sometimes meet up with friends, and watch movies. "I see. You know, I'm thinking of organizing some corporate events for employees and their families. It's important to build a team not only at work, but also outside of work," Cole said. "It would be great to meet your wife." Michael politely agreed, although corporate parties had never been his favorite pastime. Tom Harris had a similar meeting the next day. Over lunch, he shared his impressions. "This new boss is a strange guy. He's too interested in our personal lives. He asked about my wife, kids, hobbies. It's like he's compiling a dossier." "Maybe he just wants to create a friendly atmosphere," Michael suggested. "Or he's looking for ways to control us," Tom grumbled. The first corporate event took place 2 weeks later on Friday evening at Giardino Restaurant in Little Italy. Cole rented a private room and invited all the drivers and their spouses. Michael reluctantly agreed to attend, realizing that refusing could have a negative impact on his career. Sarah was very enthusiastic about the invitation. She bought a new dress, spending the money they had been saving to repair the washing machine. "When was the last time we went out?" she asked, fixing herself up in front of the mirror in the bedroom. Michael couldn't remember. Indeed, their social life had been reduced to a minimum in recent years. About 20 people gathered at the restaurant. Cole greeted the guests at the entrance, introduced himself to the employees' wives, and asked about their work and hobbies. When it was Sarah's turn, he held her hand a little longer than usual. "It's very nice to meet you. Michael has told me a lot about you," he said, although Michael remembered that he had said very little about his wife. "Thank you for the invitation. Events like this are very important for the morale of the employees," Sarah replied with a smile. During dinner, Cole circulated among the tables, chatting with each couple. Michael noticed that he lingered longer at their table than at the others. Cole asked Sarah about her work at the dental clinic, whether she liked living in Chicago, and what their vacation plans were. Sarah perked up during the conversation. At home, she rarely met people who showed such genuine interest in her opinion. Cole knew how to listen, ask the right questions, and make his conversation partner feel truly important. "Your wife is a very intelligent woman," Cole said to Michael when Sarah excused herself to the ladies' room. "You're lucky." Michael nodded, not knowing how to respond. Compliments about his wife from his boss made him feel awkward. After dinner, Cole announced that he planned to hold such meetings every month. "We're not just colleagues, we're family," he said, raising his wine glass. On the way home, Sarah was unusually talkative. "David Cole is such an interesting person. It's so rare to meet a boss who is genuinely interested in people and not just profit margins." "Uh-huh," Michael agreed, focusing on the road. "He said he recently got divorced. It must be hard to start over in a new city," Sarah continued. Michael didn't remember Cole mentioning divorce during their conversation. The following week, a thank you note from Cole arrived at the office for all employees for participating in the corporate event. Attached to the note was a photo taken during dinner. Everyone looked happy and relaxed in the picture. Sarah hung the photo on the refrigerator. It turned out well. We haven't had pictures like this in a long time. The second event took place a month later, bowling at an entertainment center on the west side. This time Cole was less formal, playing with everyone, joking and cheering up those who were playing poorly. Sarah turned out to be a surprisingly good bowler. Cole noticed this and suggested playing him one-on-one. Michael watched his wife laugh at her boss's jokes as he showed her the proper throwing technique, lightly touching her hand to correct her position. "Your wife is a real talent," Cole said when Sarah won the game. "Yes, she's always been athletic," Michael replied, although he couldn't remember them bowling in recent years. After bowling, the group moved to the bar in the same entertainment center. Cole ordered drinks for everyone and proposed a toast to family values and the friendly atmosphere in the team. Michael noticed that Tom Harris was watching the proceedings with some skepticism. "I don't like the way that guy is hanging around our wives," he said quietly to Michael. "He's just trying to create a friendly atmosphere," Michael replied, although he himself was beginning to feel a certain discomfort. By the end of the evening, Sarah and Cole found themselves in the center of a small group, discussing plans for their summer vacations. Cole talked about his travels in Europe when he was still working in the company's international department. Sarah listened with obvious interest, asking questions about different countries and cities. "Michael and I have never been abroad," she admitted. "That definitely needs to be fixed. Travel broadens your horizons and gives you a new perspective on life," said Cole. On the way home, Sarah was lively and talkative again. "Can you believe he offered to help us plan a trip to Europe? He knows some inexpensive hotels and can give us advice on the route." Michael said nothing. They didn't have the money for a trip to Europe. They barely had enough for their monthly expenses. The next day at work, Cole stopped by Michael's truck while he was loading it. "We had a great time yesterday. Your wife is a very interesting conversationalist. I rarely meet people with such a lively mind." "Thank you," Michael replied, continuing to stack the packages. "By the way, if you need any advice on planning your vacation, let me know. I have a lot of contacts in the travel industry," Cole added and left. Tom, who had overheard the conversation, shook his head. "That guy is definitely up to something. Bosses don't behave like that just out of friendliness." Michael didn't respond, but Tom's words stuck in his mind. The third corporate event was planned as a picnic in Grant Park on the shores of Lake Michigan. Cole rented a barbecue area and organized a volleyball court. The weather at the end of May was warm and sunny. Sarah spent Saturday morning choosing an outfit, which was unusual for a trip to the park. She wore new jeans and a light blue blouse that she had bought in the spring but had never worn. "You look beautiful," Michael said as he buttoned his shirt. "Thank you. I want to look decent in public," Sarah replied, fixing her hair in front of the mirror. A group of colleagues and their families had already gathered in the park. Cole greeted the guests near the barbecue, dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, which made him seem more approachable and friendly. "Sarah, you look wonderful," he exclaimed as he approached the greens. "Michael, you're very lucky to have a wife like that." Sarah blushed noticeably at the compliment. Michael nodded with a forced smile. While preparing the food, Cole asked Sarah to help with the salads, and they found themselves standing next to each other at the table preparing the ingredients. Michael watched them talk and laugh as they prepared the vegetables. Cole was telling a story, gesturing animatedly, and Sarah was listening with an interested expression on her face. "Hey Mike, can you help with the grill?" Tom Harris called out, distracting Michael from his observations. After lunch, a volleyball game began. Cole suggested dividing into teams, and Sarah ended up on his team against Michael. During the game, a natural interaction developed between them. Cole gave her tips on serving technique, they cheered each other's successful shots, and exchanged approving glances. Michael noticed that his wife was playing with an enthusiasm he hadn't seen in a long time. After winning the game, Cole put his arm around Sarah's shoulders in a team gesture, but his hand lingered a little longer than the situation required. Tom noticed it too. "Your wife is in great shape today," he said to Michael during the break. Yes, she loves active games, Michael replied, although he couldn't remember the last time they had played sports together. That evening, Sarah was unusually animated. She talked about conversations with other wives and Cole's plans to organize a summer corporate trip to the lake. David is thinking of renting cottages for the weekend. Can you imagine what a great vacation that would be? She said, as she cleared the dishes after dinner. We can't afford the extra expense, Michael reminded her. He said the company would cover the main expenses. We'll only have to pay for personal items, Sarah explained. Michael said nothing, but he found it strange that Cole had discussed the financial details of the trip with the employees' wives rather than with the employees themselves. The following week, Sarah began staying late at work. First for half an hour, then for an hour. She explained that she had new responsibilities at the clinic and needed to rework the patient registration system. Dr. Patel asked me to help with computerizing the filing system. It will take some time, but he promised a raise, she said, coming home at 8 p.m. instead of the usual 6:30. Michael didn't object. The extra income would be welcome given their financial situation. But after a few days, he noticed other changes. Sarah began checking her phone more often, smiling at the messages. When Michael asked who the messages were from, she replied with vague phrases like friends, work, or nothing important. One morning, he saw her quickly put her phone away when he entered the kitchen. Something urgent? He asked. No, Jessica sent me a funny picture, Sarah replied without looking at him. Michael knew Jessica well enough and didn't remember her being into sending pictures. The atmosphere at home became more tense. Sarah seemed distracted during conversations and often asked Michael to repeat himself. She began to pay more attention to her appearance, bought new cosmetics, and made an appointment with a hairdresser. I decided to update my image, she explained when Michael noticed the changes. Is there a reason? He asked. I just want to look better. Is that so bad? Sarah replied with a slight irritation in her voice. Michael began to attribute these changes to the stress of extra work at the clinic. Sarah always had a hard time dealing with changes in her work routine. Perhaps the new responsibilities were more difficult for her than she wanted to admit. In early June, there was another corporate event, a dinner at a restaurant on Magnificent Mile. This time, Cole chose a more expensive place than usual. Sarah wore a black dress that Michael had never seen before. New dress? He asked. I bought it last month. I've been wanting something elegant for a long time, she replied. At the restaurant, Cole was especially attentive to Sarah. He helped her with her chair, recommended dishes from the menu, and asked her opinion about the wine. Michael noticed how often Cole addressed Sarah specifically during the general conversation at the table. Sarah, what do you think of the new exhibition at the Art Institute? Cole asked. And what is your opinion about this political scandal? He continued. Sarah responded at length, demonstrating a level of erudition that Michael had not noticed in their conversations at home for a long time. She seemed to blossom in Cole's company, becoming more confident and eloquent. After dinner, when the group went outside, Cole suggested a walk along the waterfront. Some couples agreed, while others went home. Sarah enthusiastically supported the idea, although Michael would have preferred to go home. During the walk, Cole walked alongside Sarah, showing her the sights and telling stories about the city. Michael walked slightly behind with the other employees, watching his wife laugh at her boss's jokes. We have an interesting new manager, said one of his colleagues. Very sociable. Too sociable, muttered Tom Harris. In my opinion, he's crossing the line. Michael didn't respond, but Tom's words made him watch Sarah and Cole's interaction more closely. At home, Sarah was in a great mood. She talked about the restaurant, the walk, Cole's plans to organize a tour of Chicago's architectural landmarks for employees and their families. He knows so much about the city. It's amazing how quickly he's learned the local history, she said, taking off her jewelry. He has time to study history, not like us, Michael replied, a little more sharply than he intended. Sarah looked at him in surprise. What does that mean? Nothing. Just tired, Michael said, heading to the bathroom. The following week, Sarah received a message during dinner. After reading it, she visibly perked up. "What is it?" Michael asked. "David sent a link to an article about Chicago architecture. Remember, we discussed it on our walk," she replied. Michael thought it was strange to receive work messages from his boss in the evening, but decided not to comment. Gradually, such messages began to come more often. Sarah explained them as informational materials that Cole sent to all participants in corporate events. Articles about cultural events, restaurant recommendations, tips for planning leisure activities. "He's a very caring boss. He thinks not only about work, but also about the quality of life of his employees," Sarah said. Michael began to doubt the innocence of these messages, but each time he found a rational explanation. Maybe Cole was really trying to create a friendly atmosphere in the team. Maybe it was a new management style he had learned in corporate courses. But his inner anxiety grew. The changes in Sarah's behavior became more and more noticeable. She initiated physical intimacy less often, found more reasons to stay late at work, and took less interest in family matters. When Michael tried to discuss household issues with her, the need for repairs, budget planning, the purchase of new appliances, she responded distractedly, as if her thoughts were occupied with something more important. Wednesday, June 20th. Michael returned from work at the usual time, around 6 p.m. Sarah was supposed to come home at 7, but by 8, she still wasn't there. This had become commonplace in recent weeks, so he wasn't worried. He reheated the leftovers from yesterday's dinner, watched the news, and started reading a magazine about trucks. At 9 o'clock, Sarah sent a message saying she would be delayed until 10 due to urgent work at the clinic. Michael replied briefly, "Okay." Sarah returned home at 10:30, tired and irritated. She explained that their computerized patient registration system had broken down and she had to restore the data manually. "Long day," Michael said, without taking his eyes off the TV. "Very," Sarah agreed. "I'm going to take a shower." They went to bed at different times and woke up with minimal communication. Sarah left for work early, citing a morning meeting at the clinic. Thursday was similar. Michael worked his usual route, delivering packages on the south and west sides of Chicago. Tom Harris complained about Cole's new requirements for delivery reports. "That guy is making our jobs harder just for the sake of it," Tom grumbled during their lunch break. Michael nodded in agreement, but his mind was preoccupied with household chores. He needed to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom, pay the electricity bill, and sort out his car insurance. On Friday morning, Sarah said she would be working late, possibly until midnight. "I need to finish transferring the card index to the new system. Dr. Patel wants it done before the weekend." "I see," Michael replied, eating his oatmeal for breakfast. "Do you mind eating dinner alone?" Sarah asked, gathering her documents into her purse. "I'm used to it," Michael said without much emotion. The day at work went smoothly. Michael finished his route by 5 in the evening, handed in his reports, and drove home. On the way, he stopped at the supermarket, bought groceries for the weekend, and filled up his car. At home, he cooked a simple dinner, watched a baseball game on TV, and read. At 10 o'clock in the evening, he decided to repair Sarah's car. The old Toyota Camry's engine had been knocking for several days, and he had promised to take a look at it. The garage in their house was small, but big enough for one car and tools. Michael turned on the light, opened the hood of the Toyota, and began to inspect the engine. The knocking was coming from the valves, a simple problem, but one that required time and precision. He had been working for about an hour when he heard the sound of a car pulling up. Sarah had returned earlier than expected. Michael heard the car door slam, the gate click, and the front door open. "Mike, are you home?" Sarah called from the house. "In the garage," he replied without stopping his work. A few minutes later, Sarah appeared in the garage. She was not wearing her clinic uniform, but jeans and a pretty blouse. Her hair was styled, her makeup fresh, not the look of someone who had spent a long day at the computer. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching him work. Checking your engine. There's a knock in the valves, Michael replied without looking up. Really? It's nothing serious. Just need to adjust the clearances. Sarah nodded, even though she knew nothing about car mechanics. She stood there for a while longer, then said, I'm going to get changed. Michael continued working. He removed the valve cover, checked the condition of the gasket, and began adjusting the clearances. The work required concentration, and he didn't notice how time had passed. Around midnight, he felt very tired. His eyes were watering, his head was spinning, and he felt nauseous. Michael decided that he was overtired, and it was time to finish. He gathered his tools, wiped his hands with a rag, and turned off the light in the garage. When he entered the house, he felt the fresh air and realized that the garage had been stuffy, probably not well ventilated. He would have to check the ventilation. The house was quiet. Sarah was probably already asleep. Michael took a shower, brushed his teeth, and went to bed. Sarah was lying on her side, facing the wall, breathing evenly and deeply. On Saturday morning, Michael woke up with a headache. He made coffee in the kitchen and ate toast with butter. Sarah was still asleep, which was unusual for a day off. She usually got up early, even on Saturdays. At 9 o'clock, he decided to wake her up. Sarah, coffee's ready, he said, shaking her shoulder gently. There was no response. Michael shook her harder. Sarah! She didn't respond. Michael turned on the light and turned her face toward him. Her skin was pale, her lips bluish. He put his ear to her chest. No heartbeat. In a panic, Michael began performing CPR and chest compressions, as he had been taught in FedEx first aid classes. There was no response. With trembling hands, he dialed the emergency number. 911, what's the emergency? The operator answered. My wife. She's not breathing. I can't wake her up, Michael said with difficulty. Sir, stay calm. Give me your address. Michael gave the address, answered the operator's questions about Sarah's condition, and continued CPR as instructed by the dispatcher. The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. 2 paramedics quickly examined Sarah, connected the equipment, and attempted to resuscitate her. 20 minutes later, the senior paramedic shook his head. I'm sorry. It's too late. What happened? Michael asked, unable to believe what was happening. Preliminary diagnosis, carbon monoxide poisoning. Do you have a headache? Feel nauseous? Michael nodded. A little, since last night. You need to go to the hospital for a checkup too. Where is your gas equipment? The boiler is in the basement, the stove is in the kitchen, and the car is in the garage, Michael replied, confused. The paramedics checked the house with a gas detector. The highest concentration of carbon monoxide was found in the bedroom adjacent to the garage. The police arrived shortly thereafter. Sergeant Johnson questioned Michael about the events of the previous evening and inspected the garage where Michael had been working on his car. Was the engine running? Asked the police officer. For a few minutes for diagnostics. Then I turned it off, Michael replied. The source of the leak was found in the garage, a damaged exhaust pipe on an old Toyota. The gas seeped through a crack in the wall between the garage and the bedroom. An accident, concluded Sergeant Johnson. Unfortunately, these things happen. Carbon monoxide is odorless, so people don't realize the danger. Michael was taken to the hospital for examination. Blood tests confirmed mild carbon monoxide poisoning. The doctor said he was lucky. A few more hours in the gas-filled room could have been fatal. The news of Sarah's death quickly spread among their friends. Tom Harris came to the hospital to support his friend. He helped with organizational matters, contacted the funeral home, and notified FedEx management. On Monday, an official condolence letter from the company, signed by David Cole, arrived at the office. He personally called Michael, expressed his sympathy, and offered to help with the funeral arrangements and unpaid leave. Don't think about work at a time like this, Cole said. The company will support you in everything you need. The funeral was held on Wednesday in a small church on the west side. Sarah's relatives, colleagues from the dental clinic, and several neighbors attended. David Cole arrived with a bouquet of white roses, expressed his condolences to the family, and stood quietly during the service. After the ceremony, he approached Michael. "What a terrible tragedy. Sarah was a wonderful person. If you need anything, please let me know." Cole looked genuinely upset. His eyes were slightly red, and his voice trembled with emotion. Michael thanked him for his support and concern for the family's tragedy. Detective Lisa Rodriguez of the Homicide Division was assigned the case of Sarah Green's death for final closure. At 45, she had 20 years of experience with the Chicago Police Department and a habit of carefully examining even the most obvious cases. Looking through Sergeant Johnson's report, the detective noticed several details that seemed strange to her. The concentration of carbon monoxide in the bedroom was significantly higher than in the garage itself, where the source of the leak was located. Usually the gas spreads evenly, but here there was a local concentration. Rodriguez arrived at the Green residence on Thursday morning, the day after the funeral. Michael was at home, filling out life insurance paperwork. He looked tired, but remained calm. "Mr. Green, I'm Detective Rodriguez. I'd like to ask a few additional questions about your wife's death in order to close the case," she introduced herself. "Of course. Come in," Michael invited her. Inside the house, the detective examined the bedroom and garage. The gap in the wall between the rooms was small, about 2 centimeters wide. Rodriguez asked a technician to measure the airflow and check how gas could spread through this opening. "Mr. Green, tell me in detail about Friday evening," the detective asked. Michael repeated his version. He was working in the garage on his wife's car, diagnosed a problem with the engine, started the engine briefly to check it, then turned it off and went to bed. "What time did you start the engine?" "Around 10:30. 5 minutes, no more." "And when did your wife come home?" "Around the same time. She came into the garage, we talked, then she went to get changed." Rodriguez recorded the statement and asked to see the damaged exhaust pipe. Examining the car, she noticed that the damage looked fresh. The edges of the tear were sharp, with no signs of corrosion. "When was the last time you drove this car?" the detective asked Michael. "Sarah drove it to work on Friday. I mostly use my pickup truck." Rodriguez contacted a mechanic from the police department, who examined the Toyota more closely. His conclusion was unexpected. The damage to the exhaust pipe had been done intentionally, probably with a sharp tool from the inside. This information made the detective rethink the case. If the gas leak had been arranged on purpose, Sarah's death could have been a murder disguised as an accident. Rodriguez began a more thorough investigation. She interviewed Sarah's colleagues at Dr. Patel's dental clinic. The clinic administrator confirmed that Sarah had worked late on Friday, but left around 7 p.m., not 10:30 p.m. as her husband had said. "We closed at 7. Sarah helped with the paperwork and left with everyone else," said the colleague. This meant that Sarah had 3.5 hours of unaccounted time between the end of work and her return home. The detective requested details of Sarah's phone calls and messages for the past month. The records revealed intense correspondence with a number registered to David Cole. The messages came daily, often in the evening, and some contained emotional expressions not typical of business correspondence. Rodriguez contacted Cole and asked him to come in to testify as a witness. He agreed, scheduling a meeting for Friday at the police station. David Cole arrived right on time, dressed in a business suit, with a serious expression on his face. He answered questions about the nature of his relationship with Sarah Green cautiously. "I knew her as the wife of one of my employees. We socialized at corporate events and exchanged information about cultural events in the city." "How often did you send her messages?" asked the detective. "Periodically. I send information to all my employees' families." Rodriguez showed him printouts of the correspondence. The messages contained phrases such as, "I miss our conversations," "I can't wait to see you," and "You make my days brighter." Cole visibly paled. "Mr. Cole, these don't seem like business messages," said the detective. After a long pause, Cole confessed, "We had a close relationship, but that has nothing to do with her death." The detective found out the details of the affair. Cole said that their relationship began a month ago, and they met at his apartment or at a cafe on the other side of town. Sarah said she was unhappy in her marriage, that she and her husband had grown apart. "Where were you on Friday night?" Rodriguez asked. "Sarah came to my place. We had dinner at my apartment. She left around 10:30. This confirmed that Michael had lied about the time his wife returned home. But a new question arose. Did he know about the affair? The detective returned to studying Michael's behavior in recent weeks. She interviewed his colleague Tom Harris, who told her about Michael's strange behavior at work. Lately, he's been kind of pensive. At corporate events, he watched his wife and new boss closely. I even told him that Cole was paying too much attention to our wives. How did Michael react to your words? He was silent, but you could see that he was thinking about something. Rodriguez requested surveillance camera footage from the area around the greenhouse and Cole's apartment. The footage showed Michael following Sarah on Thursday evening as she drove not to her home, but to Cole's. He parked a block away from Cole's house and waited for several hours. A technical examination of the garage yielded new results. Traces of metal shavings matching the material of the exhaust pipe were found on the workbench. An awl with microscopic particles of metal of the same composition was found in the toolbox. The detective reconstructed the events of Friday. Michael knew about his wife's affair, followed her on Thursday, and set a trap on Friday. He damaged his wife's car exhaust pipe, calculating that carbon monoxide would seep into the bedroom when he diagnosed the engine problem. When Sarah returned from her meeting with Cole, Michael started the damaged engine, creating a concentration of gas in the garage. The gas seeped through a gap into the bedroom where Sarah was sleeping. Michael himself was not in the garage for long and suffered only mild poisoning. On Monday, Rodriguez obtained an arrest warrant for Michael Green on charges of first-degree murder. She arrived at his home early in the morning. "Mr. Green, you are under arrest on suspicion of murdering your wife," the detective said, showing him the warrant. Michael did not resist. In the police car, he sat silently, looking out the window at the houses in his neighborhood passing by. At the police station, the detective presented him with the evidence: the technical analysis of the exhaust pipe, the surveillance camera footage, witness statements about his knowledge of his wife's affair, and inconsistencies in his statements about the time Sarah returned home. "We have all the evidence of premeditated murder," Rodriguez said. "You deliberately damaged the exhaust pipe, followed your wife to her lover's house, and calculated the time and method of poisoning." Michael was silent for a long time, then asked, "How did you find out?" "Technical evidence doesn't lie, and people tell the truth sooner or later too." Michael lowered his head and began to speak slowly, as if weighing each word. "I found out about them by accident. On Thursday, I followed Sarah after work. I saw her go into that Cole's house. I sat in the car for 3 hours, waiting for her to come out." The detective wrote down every word of the confession. "I thought about it all night. 15 years of marriage, and she traded me in for her boss in an expensive suit. He could give her what I could never give her: money, status, a beautiful life." "Why didn't you talk to her?" "What was there to talk about? She had already made her choice. I saw how she glowed next to him, how she laughed. She hadn't laughed like that at home in a long time." Michael recounted how he planned the murder. He knew that Sarah met with Cole on Fridays, that she came home late and went straight to bed in the bedroom next to the garage. The damage to the exhaust pipe was calculated to create a lethal concentration of gas in the bedroom. "I didn't want her to suffer. Carbon monoxide is a peaceful death. People fall asleep and don't wake up. Do you understand that you committed murder?" Michael nodded. "I understand, but I couldn't live knowing that she was cheating on me every day, laughing at me with him." The detective finished the confession report. Michael Green was charged with first-degree premeditated murder. He was placed in a temporary detention center awaiting trial. David Cole had to testify in court about the nature of his relationship with the victim. The scandal surrounding his affair with his subordinate's wife led to his transfer from the Chicago office. Tom Harris visited Michael in prison before the trial. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have found another way out." "What way out? Divorce? Dividing property that we hardly have? Alimony that I won't be able to pay?" Michael replied. "At least now she won't be able to betray anyone else." The court sentenced Michael Green to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In his final statement, he said, "I don't regret what I did. I only regret that our marriage came to this." The Sarah Green case became one of those cases that detectives remember for years. An ordinary family, ordinary problems, but jealousy and betrayal turned everyday life into a tragedy that destroyed the lives of everyone involved.